A very good morning to everyone. Today our PG activity topic is fluorescent in situ hybridization. What do we mean by in situ is within the cell, and hybridization is allowing your probe DNA and your target DNA to hybridize together, and this will be visualized with the use of fluorescence. So basically we'll be covering in situ, we'll be learning about our cells, we'll be learning about fluorescence, and we'll be learning lastly about hybridization. So we'll be briefly brushing upon our genetics. We'll learn about the principle of fluorescence. What is the fluorescence microscope? Your fish probes, the procedure for fish, the types of fish, and we'll look into what is CISH and CGH. Okay, so your cell has a cytoplasm and nucleus. Nucleus contains your DNA, and your chromosome is a highly ordered structure of DNA, and the chromatin contains nucleosomes, which are your DNA, which is negatively charged, is bound around your positively charged histone. And this is your lastly your Watson and Crick model of DNA, in which you have sugar phosphate backbone and your nucleotide base pairing, which provides stability, which is your adenine and thymine bonds and your cytosine and guanine bonds. Next, your chromosomes. We have 46 chromosomes. There is 22 pairs of autosomes and one sex chromosome, either X or XY. Then your chromosomes, they have your primary constriction, which is your centromere, and it divides it into P arm and your Q arm, and you have your chromatids. Then if there is a secondary constriction, then it gives rise to your satellite chromosomes. Next, we'll be looking to the next picture, which is your locus. Now, what is locus? Locus is basically just a position of a gene. So this locus is just for your eye color. And what is your allele is your alternate variant of your gene. So you can have allele for brown and you can have allele for a blue color eye. So if both are brown, it is your homozygous. If both one is brown, one is blue, it's your heterozygous. Next, your karyotype. Your karyotype is your chromosomal chromosome constitution. Next is your karyogram, which is your figure which shows your karyotype, which are arranged in standard array sequence. Then is your ideogram, which is your, just a diagrammatic representation of whatever is your karyogram. Nextly, your classification of chromosomes. Now it is based on your centromere position. If it is in the middle, it is your metacentric. If it is between your middle and the end, it is your submetacentric. And if it is close to the end, it is your acrocentric. And towards at the end, it is your telocentric. Now it is also based on number of chromosomes. So if you have centromeres, if you have only one centromere, it is monocentric. Two, it is your dicentric. Acentric is without any centromere. And your holocentric is having diffuse centromeres and microtubules. Nextly, this is according to Denver system. There was a conference held in Denver in which they divided the chromosomes based on the size, which was later modified by Patau into group A to G. So the main points of this classification is group A and F is your metacentric, your D and G is your acrocentric, and all other groups are your submetacentric. Now the SAT chromosome is your satellite chromosomes, which is your chromosome 13, 14, 15, 22, 21. And your X chromosome is in group C and your Y chromosome is in group G. Nextly, we'll be learning about the history of human genetics. It's broadly divided into these three eras. The first era is your pre-banding era, which spans roughly around 100 years, in which it's your classical cytogenetic era, in which your 1879 was your first identification of your chromosome. The word chromosome was used in around 1888. Your DNA was discovered in 1953, and lastly, there was identification of your trisomy, which was also in around 1959. So next we'll go on to the pure chromosomal banding era, started in when there was a discovery of your Q banding by Dr. Lore. And in this era, which is spanning roughly around 16 years, your translocation, inversion, deletions, and your insertions were identified. And this era ended in 1986 when the first molecular cytogenetic experiment on your human chromosome was done, which is your in situ hybridization or your fish, which led to the error of your final error, which is your molecular cytogenetic error, the error which we are in. Next, we will look at the types of chromosomal banding. Now, your DNA is negatively charged, so your your positive dyes will bind to your DNA. So you have your quinacrine binding, which is no longer used, but it is used only for the rapid identification of your Y chromosome. C banding or constitutive or centromere banding. So this is used to see whether it is monocentric, you have dicentric chromosomes, centromeres. Next is your G banding or GIMSA. It is also known as GTG, which is G bands by trypsin using GIMSA. So in this G banding, you can see there is alternate light and dark areas. Now, whatever dark areas that you can see, it is because this area has high adenosine and thymine binding areas. So this will stain as dark, and your light areas are mainly due to your cytosine and guanine binding. Then is your reverse banding or R banding. In this, it is exactly opposite to your G banding. The use of this reverse banding is mainly if there is a deletion in your telomeres which stain dark in your R banding, which in your G banding stains light. Next, we'll be touching upon chromosomal breakage syndrome. Now, this is a group of syndrome in which there are defects in your DNA repair mechanism or genetic instability. It is most commonly seen in autosomal recessive disorders, and there's a high predisposition to cancer. So now, what are the pathogenesis? If there is a loss of DNA repair, which is seen in Xeroderma pigmentosa, there is a high risk of skin cancer. Next is your interstrand crosslink, which is seen in Fanconi syndrome, which causes AML and your other bone marrow failure disorders. Then is your genomic instability, which is seen in ataxia telangiectasia, in which also you can see skin disorders, solid tumors and leukemias. Then is your increased exchange between sister chromatids, which is seen in Bloom syndrome. Change in nucleotide, which is your mutation in gene, which is your ERCC6 or ERCC8, which is your cocaine syndrome. Now we'll be touching on fluorescence. Now, what is the principle of fluorescence? Now, fluorescence was first discovered by Sir George Stokes, and he coined and described the term fluorescence. He observed that in this mineral fluorospar, once you throw your UV light on this, it emits a red color light. Now, what is fluorescence? Is just the ability of any substance to absorb energy, light, and to emit light of a lower energy or a higher wavelength than that of observed. Lower, your energy is inversely proportional to your wavelength. So, if it is lower energy, it will always emit a higher wavelength. Next, we'll be coming to fluorochromes. Now, what are fluorochromes? These are the substances which emit fluorescence and which are attached to your probe DNA. So the most commonly used is your DAPI, which is your 4,6-diamidino 2-phenylindole, your fluorescence, which is emits blue color, then your fluorescence, which is the FITC, which is your fluorescence in situ in isothiocyanate, is a derivative of fluorescence which emits a green color, your rhodamine, which emits a red color. These are the most commonly used, these three are the most commonly used. And the latest one is your Alexa 488, which emits a green color. Now we'll take the fluorescence, which is your FITC, which gives you a green color. If you can see the last two columns, this is your excitation. Sorry. This is your excitation or your absorption color. So it absorbs around 494, which is around in your blue wavelength. It absorbs wavelength, and it emits around in the green, which is your FITC, which is your 523. We'll be going on to the fluorescence microscope. Now, for understanding purpose, we'll just assume that this is labeled with FITC. Now, you know whatever light source the light source used in microscope, fluorescent microscope is your mercury, your LED, or your neon light, halide light. So these are all polychromatic light which is having all colors of wavelengths. So it hits your excitation filter. Now, when it hits the excitation filter, it allows only one particular wavelength of light to pass through. Now, you know your fluorochrome is FITC and it absorbs only blue color. So you will choose your excitation filter of blue color. So once it passes through your excitation filter, it hits your dichromic mirror, which is angled at 45 degree. It reflects the light, passes through the objective and hits your specimen. Once it hits your specimen, the fluorochrome gets excited. It emits a light which is in green color, passes through the objective and passes through your dichroic mirror. Now the dichroic mirror, it allows reflection of excitation of light, and it allows the passing of your higher wavelength light, and it passes through your emission filter and lastly through the ocular lenses, and you are able to detect the fluorescence. Now, this is the diagram showing your fluorescent microscope. The most important part is your fluorescence filter cube. Now, whatever is your specimen labeled with fluorochrome, you can choose your excitation filter and your emission filter accordingly in this filter cube and change it accordingly. And now this is your fluorescent microscope with your hardware and software and your camera for digitization of your fish images. Next, we'll be going on to the classification of fish probes. Now, what is a probe? It's just a fragment of DNA which is just exactly opposite or complementary to your target DNA of interest. Now, this fish probes are classified on your chemical property, labeling, and your target size. So, chemical property initially it started with you use radioactive. It later on shifted to non-radioactive, and then it went to DNA-based oligonucleotide, which is your 20 to 50 nucleotides. And lastly, the latest ones are your peptide nucleic acid oligonucleotide and your log nucleic acid oligonucleotide. Both of these are thermally more stable and require shorter hybridization time. Next is your labeling. Now, there is direct labeling and indirect. Direct is when your fluorochrome is directly attached to your probe DNA. Indirect labeling is your antibodies are tagged with fluorochrome. Now, if you see this, the top part is your probe DNA. It is attached to your fluorochrome. So it will on binding or hybridization, it will give you fluorescence, and this is your direct labeling. Second is, you can see here the antibodies are tagged with fluorescence, and this binds to your probe, but your probe is bound with biotin labeled nucleotide analogs. So whatever your antibodies is, it is against your biotin. So this binds to it, and this results in fluorescence. Next is your target size. Now, this is the most common classification. You can use your whole chromosome panes, which is your entire chromosome is visualized, partial in which only your part of which you're interested in is visualized. Then is your locus specific probes, which can be visualized both in metaphase and interface cells. Then is your repetitive, which is your telomeric ends can be seen. Now, this is your diagram showing whole chromosome panes. The entire chromosome is visualized. In this, only your telomeric ends, your locus specific areas are visualized. Now, I just wanted to you to pay attention on this. This is the circle that you see is your interface nuclei. This is in a resting phase, so you can't see your chromosome in that X-shaped manner that we can see over here. These are your metaphase chromosomes in dividing phase. Next is your sample preparation for fish. So you can use your heparinized peripheral blood. You can use bone marrow, especially in hematological malignancies. Your fibroblast culture for skin biopsy, in which you need adequate amount of metaphase cells. Then is your amniotic fluid, which is most commonly used in prenatal conditions, and it is around 20 to 30 milliliter is used, and it has you can do it in around 6 to 18 weeks. And the next is your chorionic villus sampling. The next is your photosynthesis or your percutaneous umbilical blood sampling. Now, this is done mainly in more than 20 weeks of gestation, but it has a risk of fetal loss of around 2 to 5%. Lastly is your paraffin embedded tissue, which is most commonly used. What you can do is just you use it on a microtome, take a thin slice of it on a slide, you deparaffinize it in xylene, and then you start rehydrating it, and you will get the tissue. Next is your fluorescent in situ hybridization. Dr. Christoph Langauer, he is credited of discovering this fish technique. Now we will come to the basic principle of fish. Now, this is your probe DNA in blue. Either it can be directly labeled or indirectly labeled, as you have learned. Next, we go for denaturation. Denaturation, basically your double stranded is made single stranded. Okay, then you add it in a hybridization mixture. But you also add your blocking DNA fragment and you denature it and you add it in your hybridization mixture. Now, why do you need a blocking DNA, or also it is also the commonly used is your COT1 DNA. Now, why you need it is your the unwanted or your unlabeled, there is you unwanted and unlabeled DNA. You don't want it in your microscope field, so you bind it with your chromosome, unwanted one, and this is your chromosomal DNA. You denature it and you will get a single stranded. Now, the lower part of it is, assuming the lower part of it is the one that is your target DNA of interest. So it binds to your labeled probe, and you can detect it use either directly or indirectly, and you can view it under microscope. But what happens is the above part is what I don't need. So it binds with your blocking DNA, and it is your unlabeled DNA, and which you can see on microscope. So what you do is post this, you give a post hybridization washes and remove this unlabeled DNA that you don't want. Next is the fish probes are all commercially available by these all companies, which is your Abbott, Leica, Obvio, and Cytovision. So they have this catalog of chromosome, locus specific region that you want and the diseases that you want. So accordingly, you can choose your fish probe. Next is your slide pre-treatment. Now you need your slide pre-treatment with pepsin because you want to reduce the background of it. So this is the main reason why we do a slide pre-treatment. Now your slides, you have to dehydrate your slides in which your metaphase nuclei spreads or interphase nuclei present in ethanol. Then you put these slides in your pepsin solution. This is your proteolytic pre-treatment which is being done. Then you incubate it for 5 to 10 minutes and for 37 degrees Celsius on a heating plate. Remove the cover slip, then incubate it in your phosphate buffered saline, which helps in annealing or denaturation of your target DNA. Then you remove the cover slip, then you post-fix the nuclei on using a post-fix solution, which is your formaldehyde, paraformaldehyde, and you cover the slide with cover slip again. Then you dehydrate the slides in ethanol and air dry it. Now the main part of your fish is your addition of your denaturation buffer to it. Then you incubate it in the warming plate for 75 degrees Celsius. You remove the cover slip, dip it in 70% ethanol to conserve the DNA, dehydrate the slide in ethanol. Lastly, you will add your 20 ml, 20 microliter of your probe solution, which is your commercially available probe solution. You'll add it to your denatured slide to allow it to hybridize well. You will put a cover slip and seal it with a rubber cement on all four corners. Then you incubate this for 3 days at 37 degrees Celsius. Then after 3 days, you take it out, you cut the rubber cement out, you remove the forceps, you remove the cover slip with forceps, and you wash it. Washing depends on whether you have a small probe or a large probe. If you have a small probe, you do in formaldehyde solution and 2 times strength of saturated saline citrate. But if you have a larger probe, you can do it with a single strength saturated saline solution and put the slides later on in a washing buffer. Then the numbers that are highlighted, these are the extra steps that you have to do if you have done your indirect labeling. That is, you will add your solution, which is your blocking solution, which is your fluorescent avidine. Then you will wash it, incubate it, and then wash it. Then you will add your fluorescent solution 2, which is your antibody solution, which is your anti-avidin against biotin, and you incubate it at 37 degrees Celsius. And then you remove it, and you use wash. Now this washing is mainly done to remove all the unlabeled DNA that you don't want and keep only the ones that you want. Then you dehydrate these slides in ethanol, and lastly you add your counter stain, which is your DAPI, which is your fluorochrome, and you cover it with a cover slip, and you finally can see the result on your fluorescent microscope. Next is the most interesting part and the most important part of how to read fish. Now we'll start with something very basic and the first one that was ever discovered in fish. So it's your trisomy 21. Now this is your interphase nuclei because you can't see your metaphase chromosome or the X chromosome. You can't see. So you can see your three orange dots. So these are your trisomy 21, which is your Down syndrome. You can see 2 copies of chromosome 18, which is your 2 copies of chromosome 18. Now, this is done together because your Down syndrome is most common, followed by the second most common, which is your Edwards syndrome. Now we'll go to how to read fish in cases of deletion. So firstly, whatever area of gene of deletion you are interested in, you should know it. You should have a probe which is exactly opposite or complementary to it. Now what happens is, if the gene is present, it will bind to your fluorochrome probe, which is your red color probe. And if it will bind, then it means that there is no deletion. So you will see a signal which is in red. But if there is no gene present to bind with your red probe, that means your deletion is present and you will not get your signal. So the problem with this is that if there is no signal, that means there is deletion. And this can happen due to any technical errors that you have not followed any of the steps that was previously mentioned. So to reduce the error, you will look at minimum 20 cells, or the best one or the most frequently used is you add a control probe to it. Now whatever is your control probe, you will add it to the same arm as that of your target chromosome. So if your deletion you're suspecting in Q arm, you will put your control probe in Q arm only. Now in your metaphase cells, in one chromosome, you will have 4 signals, which is your 2 red and 2 green. But when you actually score, when actual scoring is done, only one signal is taken from one chromatids. I'll explain in this. See, now this is your normal chromosome in which there is no deletion. So this is your pair of chromosome. This is your only one chromosome. Now per chromosome, I said there were 4 signals. There are 4 signals. There is 2 red, 2 green. Okay. But when you score it, you will only say it's 1 red, 1 green. Now in this picture, you can see one chromosome having 2 red, 2 green. So this one is normal. This one has only green, which is your control probe. It has no red. Now no red or no signal means there's deletion. So this is the chromosome we are studying, is your chromosome 22. So there's micro deletion of your chromosome 22, which is seen in velocardial facial syndrome. Next is how to read fish in cases of translocation. Now translocation, the very common one is your translocation 922, which is your CML. Now chromosome 9, your BCR gene is labeled with red in chromosome 9. Your ABL gene in chromosome 22 is labeled as green. So now the question arises that translocation 922 is also seen in CML, AML and ALL. So on molecular level, they are distinguished into 2 categories, which is your major and your minor. And your major is the one which is most commonly seen in CML, and your minor is most commonly seen in childhood ALL. So you should know where the breakpoint occurs. Now only concentrate on the chromosome 22. Chromosome 22. Now in what happens in your major breakpoint is that your green, what happens in a major breakpoint is that in chromosome 22, the break occurs below the green probe or below the green signal. So what happens is the green remains on chromosome 22 and and the remaining part goes to chromosome 9. But what happens in chromosome 9 is it breaks half. So half will be on the chromosome 9 and half goes to your chromosome 22. So this will have this is your Philadelphia chromosome, which will have half green. It will have full green and one half of red. So in major breakpoint, what you'll have, this is your chromosome with 9, which is normal. So you will have one red, which is large. You'll have half red, which is your small. You'll get one signal of small. And then you'll get one green signal, full green signal. And you will get one having green and red signal. Now what happens in your minor breakpoint is that your chromosome 22, it breaks through within the green signal. So what happens is your half green shifts to chromosome 9. And your chromosome 9 breaks, as previously said, that it breaks into half. It always breaks into half. So half will be on your chromosome 9 and half will shift to your chromosome 22. So in this minor breakpoint, you'll have your one chromosome 9, which is red in color, one chromosome 9, which will have red and green, one chromosome 22, which will be normal, which will have green, and one, your Philadelphia, will have green and red. Now I'll explain it in this. The first diagram shows no translocation. So you have your chromosome 22, which is in green. You have your pair of chromosome 9, which is in red. So you can see one signal. You will take one signal. So you can see 2 red, 2 green in interphase nuclei. Now next, this is your major breakpoint. As I said, one will be your one of your chromosome 9 is normal, so you will get one red, which is large. Your one chromosome 9, it breaks into half, so you will get a very small red. And your one chromosome 22 is normal, so you will get your full green red. But the other is the other chromosome 22 has red and green, so it will give you a yellow color. Now, why it gives a yellow color is basically red and green are your primary colors. When you mix them, you get a yellow color. But now we have a fancy word for it, which is known as co-localization, in which two resolution of two images, they merge and they give you this yellow color. You can see this is the Philadelphia chromosome, which is one yellow you see in your major breakpoint. Next is your minor breakpoint. Now you can see your one chromosome 9 is normal, so you will get one red signal. Your chromosome 22 is normal, you will get a green signal. But your chromosome 9, which has half red, half green, will give you yellow signal. Your chromosome 22 has half green, half red, so it will give you a yellow signal. In both the so you will have two yellow in cases of minor breakpoint region, which can be seen over here in your interphase spread as two yellow. Next, we'll be going on the types of fish that are present. This is your 2 or 3 color fish. That is, you can use a whole chromosome panes, and you can see chromosome 1, 2, and 4, and multiple chromosome, which is of interest to you. Then is your multiplex fish. In this, each chromosome, each pair of chromosomes are color coded in different colors. So you will be able to look at any translocation or anything that is present. Then is your spectral karyotyping or sky. In this, there is karyotyping done along with your multi-fish color, which is used that each chromosome is colored in different color. This is mainly used when your karyotyping is of poor quality. You will use spectral karyotyping. Then is your centromeric specific multicolor fish. In this, your only centromere regions are color coded in different colors. This is to see if any intrachromosomal aberrations or any breakpoint in each. Then is your acrocentric fish, in which actually in this your P arm is put as green color and your Q arm is red. So if there is a mismatch or failure of hybridization, so your green color comes down and your red color goes up. Next is the interphase fish. This is the most easy one. In the interphase fish, there's two chromosomes of one and two signals of chromosome 15. In this, there's only one signal of chromosome 15 indicating monosomy, three signals of 15 indicating trisomy. Next is your comet fish. Now, what is your comet fish is mainly used in DNA damage due to radiation. So what happens is, if your DNA is not damaged, it remains in only one place and this forms your comet head. But if it is damaged and there's a break or anything, it will give out a tail, and this will indicate your DNA which have broken or your breakpoint frequency. The applications of fish. Now, fish is used for gene mapping. It can be used for microdeletion, chromosomal abnormalities, and prenatal diagnosis, which is your trisomy, monosomy, postnatal diagnosis of carrier diseases of genetic disease. Then is your tumor cytogenetics, your AML, CLL, your CML, your lymphoma. Then study of evolution, especially it's done in animals, fish, your insects, and to study evolution. Developmental biology in plants to know the color of by a particular plant has a particular color, you do fish in those. Next is your chromogenic in situ hybridization. So this is a cytogenetic technique which combines your IHC with your in situ hybridization. Now this diagram is pretty similar to your indirect labeling, in which your probe is your biotin labeled nucleotide is attached to your probe DNA, but your strep avidin is linked to your horseradish peroxidase, and it binds and this converts your diaminobenzidine into brown precipitate, which is similar to what we see in IHC, which gives a brown color. Now, compared to fish, the CISH probes, they can be used only for certain cases, and it binds to only centromeres of 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 17, 18, X and Y, and also some cancer-related genes, which is your HER2, EGFR, MYC, and TOP2A. Now, it is most commonly used in HER2 right now, and it is very cheap and easier to use because you don't have to use your fluorescent microscope, which is quite expensive. Then your CISH reagents, they are more stable, and CISH and IHC, they are similar because you use enzyme reaction, which is your horseradish peroxidase. And your CISH and your IHC, it what does is it only measures your protein expression, whereas CISH, it measures your DNA amplification. So this is the first diagram is showing no amplification in HER2. This is seen in breast carcinoma, in which there is low amount of low amplification, and this last C is your breast carcinoma showing high amplitude. Next, what is your comparative genomic hybridization? So it's a molecular cytogenetic method in which you analyze your copy number variations and in your test DNA, and you compare it with your reference DNA. Your test DNA is something which you think they might be deletions or they will be extra chromosomes, extra duplication present, and you will compare it with your reference sample. So now this is your test sample, which is labeled with red and your reference labeled with green. You mix it, allow it to hybridize. When you look at it, if it is giving you a yellow color, it means it is normal. And if it goes towards your if it gives you a red color, it means DNA gain or duplication is present. And if it gives you a more of green color, which is your reference, that indicates your DNA loss or deletion is present. Now, this is how it is reported. If it is on the axis, which is your 0, it means it is normal. If it moves towards a plus sign or towards red, it means there's a duplication of copies, 3 copies or 4 copies present. And if it moves towards your green area on towards the negative side, it means there is a deletions present.